Many pilots wear Speedmasters, but this is the Omega most have never heard of, and it's the one I actually fly with. Here's why this forgotten beast might be the better pilot's watch. This is Pilot Watch Gouge, where function in the cockpit meets obsession on our wrists. Just honest intel for pilots and watch nerds alike. This vintage watch has 7 hands, 5 dials, 3 crowns, 2 pushers, and is slightly radioactive. What's not to like? So when I discovered the lesser-known Flightmaster, I knew this could be the Omega I could wear. Even better, it's become the Omega that I love. My airline buddies who got me into watches were impressed when I first found the Flightmaster. My friends are hardcore Speedmaster fans with deep knowledge about the Omega brand and the Speedmaster line. But even they had never heard of this one. They were gobsmacked when the flighty showed up in the group chat. This made me want this funky watch even more. I soon ended up on the jump seat of a 787-8 flying from LAX to Haneda when the captain turned around and asked me what took me to Japan that night. I explained that I was going watch shopping. The crew all agreed that that was a valid reason to fly 12 hours across the Pacific. When I got back, in desperation, I turned to eBay and lost the auction on a Flightmaster for sale in London by $40. The very next day, I found a listing by a watch dealer on Long Island. We haggled a bit, but agreed on a fair price, $2,600, a lot less than what most Speedmasters go for. She's overpolished, needs a service, but she's mine. My Flightmaster is chunky, vintage, but still sort of works, all of which are very on brand for me. Despite not being anywhere close to one of the more expensive examples on the market, my flighty has gathered some very nice compliments from pilots I've flown with, as well as from some serious watch collectors and folks in the business. Let's get this out of the way. This watch wears big, but I like that. At 43 millimeters, the Flightmaster was huge for its time, bigger than a Speedmaster Chrono or Seamaster diver. But the short integrated lugs make it wearable, even strapped over a flight suit. It's a pilot's watch. A pilot's watch is defined by size, legibility, and ease of use. The Flightmaster delivers on all three, despite including chronometer, GMT, and timing bezel complications using a mechanical movement. The orange of the hands really pop. The busy but well-organized dial just makes sense. The lume on the indices has naturally acquired a nice patina. On my 8-inch chunk of a wrist, it looks pretty sharp. Got to give credit to Omega. Back in the day, they pushed some boundaries. They took chances, and I love them for it. I have literally been stopped in a pilot's lounge and asked what the heck I had on my wrist. I've had watch journalists stop to take a picture. This watch may be many things, but subtle is not one of them. The classic 1970s Omega bracelet is a flat link style, tapering down from about 22 millimeters at the lugs to approximately 18 millimeters at the clasp. Stamped folded links, light compared to modern bracelets, which makes them more comfortable, though they can stretch over time. Omega has reissued service bracelets that are dimensionally identical to the originals. These are solid link versions, heavier but more durable, and they use the same style of end links. I've timed equipment resets with the chronograph in the flight levels, tracked my home time zone with the GMT hand when working trips. This isn't a desk diver. It actually earns its keep. The Flightmaster features a full chronograph with seconds, minutes, and hours. The complications are color matched to their pushers. Bright orange hands for local time, plus a blue airplane hand for GMT. And on the caliber 911 like this one, a running second sub-dial. At 3 o'clock, you've got a crown for winding and setting local time, then chrono pushers at 2 and 4. The crown at 10 o'clock sets the GMT, and 8 o'clock turns the handy internal bezel. Snap between time zones, track elapsed time without touching the chrono. The name Flightmaster first appeared in 1957 when Omega registered it for professional watches. A couple of years later, special railmasters carrying the Flightmaster name were issued to pilots of the Peruvian Air Force. The Flightmaster was Omega's answer to the jet age. By the late 1960s, airlines were flying farther and faster, crossing multiple time zones on every trip. Omega built the Flightmaster because they saw a growing need from professionals. Omega set out to build a tool for them, even though they knew that most of their customers would not actually be on a flight deck. Watchmakers have always understood the very broad halo that pilot watches create for their brands. My Flightmaster is the reference 145.036 from 1976. Inside beats the Lamonia-based caliber 911, a manual winding chronograph movement with a 48-hour power reserve, identifiable from the running second subdial at 9 o'clock. On the outside, you get Omega's oversized pilot's line case, bulky but balanced, with its signature color-coded crowns and pushers. It's what Omega referred to internally as the anthropomorphic case during development. The term pilot's line came later for marketing purposes. Flightmasters came with either orange or yellow hands. Some say the yellow was for pilots who needed red light compatibility, and orange for civilians, but both were sold side by side. The color was about legibility, not exclusivity. It's a purpose-built pilot's instrument. It has a terrific amount of fiddliness that I find fascinating, but also actually useful on trips. The Flightmaster wasn't dreamed up by a stylus. It was engineered as a tool. Omega partnered with EPSA, the same Swiss casemaker famous for compressor dive watches. EPSA built the oversized case, using a flat isofrane gasket system, while Omega developed the rest. Omega officially rated the Flightmaster to 60 meters of water resistance, plenty for the 3 S's of aircrew layovers: shower, swim, and snorkel. But here's the secret. The EPSA case was tested far deeper, even down to 120 meters in prototypes. It was built like a diver, but sold as a pilot's watch. That being said, the gaskets, crowns, and pushers on my Flighty are likely decades old. Unless fully serviced and pressure tested, I wouldn't trust it anywhere near water today. Omega made 4 main versions of the Flightmaster. The very first, the 145.013 from 1969, carried the caliber 910 with a 24-hour AM/PM indicator at 9 o'clock. That was followed by the 145.026, upgraded to the caliber 911 with a true running seconds display in the subdial at 9 o'clock. Omega had actually listened to feedback from pilots who wanted a way to check at a glance that the watch was actually running. This change made the watch much more practical. Then came my watch, the 145.036, also with the 911 but with subtle case and crystal improvements. It's the refined late production version. Only around 37,500 Flightmasters were ever made across all references, and only a fraction of those carried the 911. Finally, there's the rare solid gold BA 345.0801, more statement piece than tool watch. So while the 013 and 026 were the pioneers, the 036 is the Flightmaster in its final form. Oversized, colorful, and unapologetically technical, it quickly found its way into the hands of the professionals it was built for: commercial airline pilots, military aviators, and world travelers. But here's the part that blew my mind about this watch's history. Its story doesn't stop in the flight levels. The Flightmaster also went to space. In the mid-1970s, the Flighty proved popular with Soviet cosmonauts. In 1969, Valery Kubasov flew as flight engineer on Soyuz 6, an early mission that tested welding in space. In 1974, Yuri Archukin carried a Flightmaster on Soyuz 14 to the Salyut 3 station. In July 1975, both Alexei Leonov and Valery Kubasov wore Flightmasters while training for the Apollo-Soyuz test project, as well as during the press junkets before and after the mission. No one represents the Flightmaster's space legacy better than Soviet cosmonaut Alexei Leonov. He was the first man to walk in space. He swapped out his Flightmaster for a Speedmaster for the flight at the request of Apollo commander Tom Stafford, who suggested there should be commonality across the two crews. Following his retirement from NASA and the Air Force, Stafford served on several corporate boards, including Omega, so that checks. In 1992, Franco Malerba, the very first Italian astronaut, wore his personally owned Flightmaster reference 036 like mine, aboard Space Shuttle Atlantis during mission STS-46. Coincidentally, Claude Nicollier, the first Swiss astronaut, was also along for the ride. He wore a swatch. While NASA never officially qualified the Flightmaster for use on orbit, this watch's DNA carried forward. Its bold, pragmatic design influenced later Omega space-bound tool watches, like the Speedmaster X33 and the Spacemaster Z33. Sure, my Flighty runs 15 to 20 seconds fast per day, but that's good enough for what I do. Like a classic airplane, it's got quirks, it's got character. I just reset it at the beginning of my duty day. I've come to appreciate the quick moment of zen in the ritual. Speedmasters are legendary. That's the Moonwatch story everyone knows. But the Flightmaster? Omega's idea was to build on the halo around professionals, to attract the growing jet set who could afford this new sort of travel. Omega supplied panel clocks for the first two Concorde prototypes, tail numbers 001 and 002, and later production aircraft that entered service with British Airways and Air France. Omega's marketing tied the Flightmaster to the glamour of supersonic travel. Let me know in the comments if I should do a Watches of the Concorde episode someday. Another example of the watch's funkiness is that, in 1973, Michael Crichton, then a young author-turned-director, treated himself to an Omega Flightmaster reference .026 to commemorate his first feature film, Westworld. That watch carries his engraved initials on the clasp. It's a perfect pairing, a chunky, seven-handed pilot's tool, born in the jet age, worn by a man imagining a future of robots, viruses from space, and theme park dinosaurs. If the Flightmaster is peak 70s, that Crichton wore one makes it even cooler in my book. If you want to stand out and get real value, vintage is the way in. Modern watches can feel so predictable, safe designs with big price tags, but vintage gets you something unique, with a history, and usually at a fraction of the cost. That's why I went with a Flightmaster. Chunky, colorful, full of character, and way more interesting than yet another modern reissue. If you've fallen for this watch like I have, here are some of the things I've learned along the way. I didn't sweat an over-polished case or a faded caseback engraving. These watches worked hard. What really matters is the movement inside and the condition of the dial. I can still get a newly manufactured caseback. I'm not precious about it. I do wish display casebacks were a thing back then, and most importantly, expect to service it if it hasn't been through a heavy check recently. These are real tool watches, not safe queens. Note, there are quirks. The Flightmaster's 911 is more challenging to service than a Speedmaster 861. Not because of the movement itself, but because of the Flightmaster's complicated case design with multiple crowns and seals. Work on the movement means a full disassembly, which is why many examples you see today are running but not freshly serviced. But unlike most Speedies, the vintage nature of the Flightmaster means Omega will only perform a service, or what they call an intervention, in Switzerland, not their service center in New Jersey. If you go that route, expect to get the watch back from Omega in 8 months to a year. This is an Omega that should be famous, but isn't. Speedmasters went to the moon. But Flightmasters are a crazy capable watch built for the flight deck. Most Speedy collectors don't even know this exists, which is exactly why I love it. If you're flying the line or just love watches that actually work for a living, hit subscribe. Next time I'm reviewing a truly OG pilot watch. Hint, there will be Oktoberfest jokes. This channel is dedicated to exploring the fascinating intersection between aerospace and watches. We'll dig deep into pilot watches, both vintage and modern, and sometimes the stories no one else is telling. This is Pilot Watch Gouge. Thanks for watching.